All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is a very popular topic. We have a lot of people on the call and we have a lot to cover. So thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Julie Dunn. I'm on our marketing team here at Geopointe. I'm going to be helping out with today's presentation. Um, Today's webinar is going to cover how to assign and automate your Salesforce territories with Geopointe. So whether or not you're using Geopointe, the webinar is going to cover how Geopointe specifically can simplify that process of managing territories in Salesforce. So we're really going to get into the weeds and show you exactly how it's done. So first, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenter for today, Ashley Crosby. She's our technical support manager here at Geopointe. And before I turn it over to Ashley, just going to remind everybody that you are more than welcome. We encourage you to ask questions as they might come to you. There's a questions box there in your GoToMeeting control panel. Use that to enter questions as they come to you. We will be using the end of the session today for Q&A. So we'll leave some dedicated time there to get to all those questions. And we will be emailing out the recording and the slide deck as well after the presentation. So stay tuned for that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ashley.
Thanks, Julie. Hello, everyone. I am really excited to do this webinar today. There is some stuff in here that we've never covered in an admin webinar, and so I'm excited to get this information out to you. So there we go, start with our agenda. So for those of you who aren't aware, this is actually the third webinar in our admin webinar series. So today is specifically about assigning and automating your Salesforce territories inside of Geopointe. But we've had two others prior to this. They are not necessary to know what's going on in this webinar. So if you've missed them and your interest is here, that's okay. And we will do a brief overview of what's covered in those, so you can find out if that is something you want to go back and watch. After we've gone through those, I'm going to do a quick review of Geopointe Terms, because I know not everybody on this call is super familiar with Geopointe, and I will be throwing around some Geopointe terms, and I don't want those to get you lost throughout this presentation. So we'll cover those before we dive into it. And at that point, we will introduce assignment plans. It is our automation tool for doing this territory management inside of Geopointe. And so we'll first do an introduction to get your feet wet with it. And then we will jump into our use case, which will turn into the majority of this presentation. It will be a demo. We will get into some shape drawing. We will talk about your automation options, and we will go through the setup process for this as well. After we've done that, we will cover some FAQs that I think many of you will be wondering about. And before we jump into your actual questions, we will also cover some additional use cases. So here we go. Let's dive into it. So on the previous webinars, we've had two previous ones. The first one covered some basic setup, which was your overview of what goes into the process after you've installed. What do you do at Geopointe after that to actually make stuff happen? The other thing we covered in that webinar was how to set it up for your end users so that it makes sense for your end users and it's not overwhelming. So that's a lot of what was covered in that first webinar. The second one was about customization. So this is meant to be for the non-coders, for you guys that are dedicated admins, and what you can do without knowing any code, using URLs, doing create record actions, or just customizing the default actions. What we also covered in that webinar was what to do with custom objects, so that when you're on the Geopointe map, a custom object looks just as clean and slick as a standard object. So again, those are rewatchable at any time on demand on our website. There's a link there that you will have access to once the slide deck goes out after the webinar. And you'll also notice we gave you some breadcrumbs there as well. So let's cover our Geopointe terms that you're going to want to know as we're diving into this today. So first, the map. We're a mapping application. We have a map, and that is where you do most of the end user front-facing work. And so this is where we are going to be building our shapes today, and we will also be performing a couple of searches throughout. So that will be done on the map. Geopointe Setup is the admin view of Geopointe. It's its own tab inside of Salesforce. And once it comes time to actually create the assignment plans, we will be spending time on the Geopointe Setup tab. Map objects. I will use that term a couple of times today. What it is our way of defining a Salesforce object that is being mapped. So if you want to see your accounts on the map, you need to create an accounts map object. It's pretty simple. It's a relationship, but just be aware when I use map object, that's what I'm talking about. A data set is how we actually query your data. And they're stored and saved, and they're visible to you on the map. I tend to think of them like something between a list view and a report, because you are doing filters on your data, you are adding fields that you want to see on the data, but beyond that, because it's on the map, there are some other options there as well, including your markers and other types of display options. So we will be working with data sets today as well. Finally, the Geopointe Shape Library. We have a library of predefined geographic boundaries that are intended specifically for shape building and building out larger shapes. So we will be spending time in there today as well. So let's talk about the problem of territory management. I think all of you on this call today who have had to define territories for your company know that it can be painful. It's either there's lots of moving parts, or you've got to extract data out of multiple systems to try and bring it together and figure out what makes most sense. Or maybe you've got this enormous list of zip codes that is just a list and doesn't really mean anything to you. What we're trying to solve with Geopointe is take out the painfulness of that territory management and instead make it a visual solution, make it a visual process, so that you are looking at a map and defining your territories based on where your data is and what the geography looks like around it. And then you don't have to worry about pulling stuff into multiple systems, doing a bunch of exports, trying to figure out how does this all work together. As long as it's your Salesforce data, you can do this all inside of Salesforce. So what am I talking about? That is all very nebulous. It's very obtuse. It's hard to visualize. Let me give you an example before we jump into some more of this explanation. Here's what some US territories might look like. These are pretty simple. They're defined just at the state level, but you can see, each one of these territories includes multiple shapes that have been combined together into a larger shape. And these would be the building blocks for creating the assignment plan. Is, if we wanted to define a West Coast territory, we would be using that West shape as that building block for that. Another example, here's one of UK territories. So you can see they could be as granular as that territory I've got there that is only London, or it could be as big as the one that kind of goes off the page that is all of Scotland. So you can make these as large or as small as you need to, dependent on the need of your company or maybe the needs of even that particular market. So what does an assignment plan actually do? It is using the geographically defined shapes to then actually write this territory information onto your Salesforce records. And the advantages to that are that first, it's very visual. You get to build these shapes while looking at a map and defining it while you're looking at your Salesforce data, not just staring at a big long list. It's also really easy. Once you've got the shapes built and you're ready to get them into the assignment plan itself, it's really just, like a process of a few clicks. And it's a very fast process. The other important thing is this is a very versatile way to do this. All we're doing is typically writing this information into a lookup field for you. That's our most standard setup option. So once this information is in that field for you, you can do whatever you want with it. This could be used to help you set up processes. This could be used for workflows. You could use it for triggers. Once we've written this data, then it is up to you what you want to do with it after that point. So I know this is hard to visualize, so I made this diagram that I hope will help kind of break it down a little bit better. So you have your record. You want this record to be in a territory. To get this or to have a territory assignment, to get this record to have a territory assignment, that record needs to be mappable, have an address, and exist inside of a shape on the map. Once it, and I've got lots of different records inside of that shape. Once that shape is defined, then that shape gets paired up with an assignment area. So you see here, we've got assignment area 1, assignment area 2, assignment area 3. Each one of these has their own individual shapes that are attached to them, and each assignment area will only ever have one shape. And then these assignment areas, once defined and filled in with a shape, become part of the assignment plan as a whole. So the assignment plan itself would be your sales territories, and then each one of the assignment areas become the actual territories themselves, west, east, south, whatever. And then each of those records get assigned east, west, south, dependent on which area they fall in. So our setup options. I just mentioned a couple minutes ago that we have 2 setup options, and the one that gets used most is the lookup field. So that is just creating a lookup field on your Salesforce object to our Geopointe assignment area object. And that lookup field just is going to store the territory information on it, and it will be written into that field. Again, most commonly used way to do it. And this is going to be used when a record is going to belong to a single territory. Our other option is a junction object. So if you need to assign a record to multiple territories, perhaps you've got your smaller localized territories, but you've got larger regional territories. And you want that to show up, or you want the record to show up in both. That's when you would use the junction object. Other reasons to use it would be you have a sales territory and a service territory, and they're different. There's lots of different reasons why you would want to use the junction object, and it just gives you that ability to do multiple assignments without having to create a whole bunch of lookup fields. So what does the process A to Z look like? You're going to start with, you need the record in Salesforce. It needs to exist in Salesforce in some way, and it needs to be mappable. So the next step is making sure it's got an address and that we have assigned what we call geocode data to it, which is a fancy word for latitudes and longitudes. Once it has that, then you're ready to draw shapes and draw your territory shapes. And those records are going to fall inside of the shapes. Once you've done that, then you're ready to create your assignment plan. And once you've got the plan created, you can build out assignment areas and assign shapes to those areas. And once you've done that, you are ready to activate your assignment plan. And at that point, then you're going to start to see the assignment data written onto your records. So with that, let's jump into our use case. Here's what we're going to try today. Acme Medical Devices is looking to redistribute territories to improve distribution coverage in growing markets. Most territories cover multiple states, but California needs to be split. So with that, let's jump into our demo. Okay, here we go. So I've actually already got this up for us in this test environment, and I'm currently on the map tab. I'm going to try and do this in Lightning today. There's no reason you can't do any of these in Classic. We work wonderfully in both. And the steps that I do today should be, there aren't very many that are particularly different between the 2 user interfaces. So it should be pretty easy to follow along if you are using Classic. For those of you who are not super familiar with our map, let me give you a quick tour of what you're looking at here. Currently, I have a map here with my other territories, except for California, here on the map. Where I added these from was here on the left, our control panel. This very first tab here in the control panel is our saved layers. So this is where you're going to find your saved data sets, your saved shapes, the other types of layers, and they can be distributed into folders or left and data sets can be unfoldered if needed. So I've got a folder here of all of my US territories just sitting here. I got this preloaded up on the map. Once they're on the map, then they go into the mapped layers, and we'll be coming in and out of here a little bit today as well. So you'll see the mapped layers tab. And this just lets you know what's actually on the map right now. Other things here on this page, we've got our search bar up here for doing, you can do searches for your Salesforce data, but you can also do searches for non-Salesforce data inside of the search. And here along the side on the right, we have your map control functions. So, this is your typical zoom in, zoom out. You've got Street View, you've got the locator if you do have location services turned on, and down below you've also got your shape drawing tools. So we aren't going to show every single one of the shape drawing tools today, but just be aware that they are all here and they are all accessible for assignment plans. Where we're going to spend the majority of our time is here in the shape library. Like I mentioned earlier, it's the one behind the globe. All these others give you the ability to draw your own polygons. So the first one is, any kind of polygon, drawn whatever kind of shape you want. Then you've got standard rectangle, standard circle, and then the other two are line tools. So once we've got data on the map, then that data will actually show up here as data on the map itself, but will also show up below the map. So for example, I am going to run an everywhere search on my US accounts data set. This data set has no filters on it, except I want it to just show me the US. And you can see our data here. So this is all of my US accounts that are currently in this org. I can see them down here as a list view with the additional fields that I've put on this data set. And I can also look at them individually on the map as well. So at this point, I think we're ready to start building. So the way that these territories were defined was trying to even them out to a point where most territories had approximately 150 accounts in them. If I go back over here to the mapped layers tab, you'll see now that there are search results on the map, that each one of the shapes is telling me how many accounts are inside of that shape. So you can see there's a few that have more than 150, but nothing that has 200. The one that has the most is, not surprisingly, the New York Metro. It's also the smallest shape. If we zoom into it, it's really only the 5 boroughs in Long Island. So, we can, so you can see that there are reasons to have larger territories, but there are also reasons to have smaller territories. And so what we want to do is try and get California to match these in their size. The California ones will end up being just a little bit smaller, but they'll still be pretty close to these others in size. So what I'm actually going to do is move this from our standard pin markers to clusters, which is going to give me a better idea of exactly where our concentrations are. And no surprise, we got a concentration in the Bay Area and we got a concentration in SoCal. So it's going to be a pretty even 50-50 split in the state. So that means we're ready to build our shape. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here to our shape library. And I'm going to go ahead and give my shape a name. We will call this one Northern California. I'm going to put it in my US territories folder. And now I need to define my shape type so I know what I'm building on. Because I'm splitting California in half, I am going to choose my counties. But you'll notice you've got some other options in here as well. So if you needed to build on something a little more specific than counties, say congressional districts or zip codes, they are here for you as well. But notice there's also things like MSAs in here. Or if you're working in education, we got school districts. So for now, I'm going to stick to county. But notice that we populated all the counties in all of the US. And while I know the boundaries between California and Nevada pretty well, we also don't want to grab one of those on accident. So I'm actually going to come over here and turn back on that Pacific Northwest Mountain West shape so I can see it while I'm building. And just for the sake of seeing where my data is, I'm also going to turn that data set back on. Okay, now I'm ready to start building. I'm going to start with the lasso tool, which allows you to lasso these guys on the map. Like so. Okay, so I didn't quite get everything I wanted. So let's get back in here with the pointer tool and grab that one. And let's actually, let's move Fresno County to SoCal. Okay, so I'm happy with that shape. And I'm going to go ahead and, oh wait, actually, first I want to do a couple more options. Over here on this options tab, you can merge it. If I don't merge it, then when I save it, we're going to see all of these individual counties on the map, which is fine if you need to see them, but I think this can be one single shape. So I'm ready to save it. And there it is. Okay. So now I can go in and draw my second shape. And again, I do want some of those shapes exposed. So I'm going to turn on the Pacific Northwest Mountain West shape, and I'm going to turn on the NorCal shape so I can see those. And we'll call this one Southern California. And I'm going to use counties again. Okay, so I'm going to lasso them again. And there they are. We're good. I would just want to make sure that that's merged again. Check that box. If I wanted to change that color a little bit, I can. So maybe I want it to be a bit more of a happy blue there. Change that and save. Oh, wait, my folder's wrong. US territories. There we go. Okay, save. Okay, so now we've got our shapes there on the map. And if I now look back at the Mapped Layers tab, I can see that my Northern California shape has 128 accounts. I can also see that if I click on the shape itself, it'll give me that information. And I can see my Southern California shape has 131. So pretty even. They're pretty close to even. So certainly even enough that they're good. At this point, then, we are ready to start talking, actually adding these shapes to an assignment plan. So for that, I am going to leave our map alone here for a second and switch to Geopointe Setup. So there's a lot that you can do inside of Geopointe Setup. Most of the stuff is not going to be covered today if you're not familiar with it. What's important to know for today is that to show stuff on the map, you need to have stuff set up in map objects. And then we're going to spend all the rest of our time here in assignment plans. So if I create a new assignment plan, first thing it's going to ask me is to select a map object to create the assignment plan for. So I'm going to choose account. And we will cover these options in a little bit more detail in a second, but there's just a couple things I want to point out. First, name is important. The second step that you really want to pay attention to is where to save my assignment info. So this is what I was talking about in the intro is, do you want to set it up as a field or do you want to set it up as a junction object? And currently, I don't have any fields here selected to use, or junction objects for that matter. So right now, I can't do anything with this. I need to create the field for it. So I'm actually going to cancel out of this, and let's go over to Salesforce Setup and walk through creating that lookup field. So here we go, going into Setup. And we're going to the Object Manager. For you classic users, that is Salesforce Setup, Customize Accounts. And then once we are in Accounts, then we're going to go to our fields. And we want to create a new field. So the field type is Lookup Relationship. Click Next. And we want it to be related to Geopointe Assignment Area. Do not choose Assignment Plan. Even though we are creating an assignment plan, where we want the lookup to go to is the actual assignment areas. Now for your field label, you're going to want to choose something that makes sense so that you're going to recognize this as your territory. So I'm going to call this my sales territory. Nice and simple. And click Next. Oh, apparently I already have that field. Well, okay. Let's call it sales assignment. That'll work. Okay. Typically, I would leave field level security, whatever the defaults are, and click Next. And in this case, I do want to add it to the page layout, so I'm going to leave that alone and click Next. What we don't need is the related lists, so I'm going to uncheck those boxes and save. Okay, now that we have our field created, we can go back to Setup. And now if I create my assignment plan, you'll notice here now is my sales assignment field ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and call this my sales territory. Territories, there we go. And we will do a quick cover of what everything is in here right now. So the SOCL filter would be used for a couple of different purposes. If you want to assign only a subset of your accounts, if there's certain accounts, maybe you've got an account type that is inactive or something like that, where there's no need to assign a salesperson to it, then you could use the SOCL filter to filter those out and not assign them. Another use for a SOCL filter might be that you want to have two different assignment plans. You want one that is for your larger clients and you want one for your smaller clients or something like that. So you could use an ARR field, an MRR field, or something like that to say anything above or below this line would be part of this assignment plan. So you do have that option. If this assignment field had existed prior and you already had data inside of it and you didn't want the plan to reassign it at any point, then you would use the grandfather records option. So then once it's assigned, it never gets reevaluated. And then over here, status, active, inactive, pretty self-explanatory. It's not going to do any assignment until you activate the plan. And reassign owner is an option if you would like to have it actually reassign these records to the person that the assignment area is assigned to. So we will cover that in a little bit more detail here in a second. First, I'm going to save it. When you save the assignment plan, the first thing it's going to do is actually kick you back out to the main assignment plan page. Don't fret, that is normal. Then you're probably going to want to come back in and edit it again. And once you come back to this page, you'll now have your assignment areas down here ready for you to actually assign. So I'm going to create not all of the ones that we have here on the map, because just for the sake of time, I want to give us more time for questions and other things. So I'm just going to do a few of these. So first, I'm going to give my assignment area the name of what I want it to display on my records. So I'm going to call this one Northern Cal, Northern CA, and find my shape. And there it is. And if I do want it to reassign owner, I would put that owner in here right now. So let's see, let's assign this to Larry. Okay, and save. And I'm going to do it again for Southern California. Find that shape. And we're going to assign these to Eric. All right, and we'll do a couple more here. Okay, find that shape, there it is. And we'll assign these to Wendy. And we'll do one more. We'll do the plane shape, I think. And I don't think we've done Mike yet. We'll do Mike. Okay, so this is all that's going on with the assignment plan, really. This is, it has a name, it has a place to store the info, and it's got the assignment areas that are linking the shapes up and potentially giving you these new owners. And so because I do want it to do a reassignment of owner, I'm going to go ahead and check this box. And I'm going to save it. You can save it and leave it inactive. Right now it's still not running. To activate it, you would either have changed the box or the drop down there from inactive to active, but you can also do it here from the front page by just clicking activate. Okay, so the process it goes through to actually do the assignment is done via batch jobs. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to tell it to kick off an assignment job because it's brand new. I want it to do an all job. And that tells us that it's kicked off successfully. If you wanted to run it ad hoc at any time, after you've done your initial run, typically you're going to do a delta. The delta job is saying, go through and look for any new records that have address information that have not been assigned to a territory yet. And that's what the delta job will do. You can monitor it from this next tab over, the batch jobs. So you will notice down here, what I've got is the assignment plan batch job, which is already done. It didn't take long. But what you also want to do is you want to make sure that this stays up to date and it's running. So there are two important jobs here that you want to make sure are running. First is the geocoder. If the geocoder is not running and scheduled in some way, shape, or form, then running your assignment plan job isn't going to do you any good. So you want to make sure that it's running here or it's running in a custom process because this first one is what ensures that your data gets assigned geocode information. So if it doesn't have the latitudes and longitudes, we're not going to be seeing it on the map, which in turn means that it's not going to get to be, it won't become part of an assignment plan. So you want to make sure that one's running first. And you'll notice the one that's here that we have scheduled runs hourly. Then your assignment plan, you have two different options. You can choose to run it daily or you can choose to run it hourly. So in this case, I'm going to set it to run hourly. So this means that it is going to look hourly for any new records to make sure that they are getting their assignments put on them. Okay, so let's actually go back to the map now and let's show you what it's actually doing. So I'm going to refresh the map here. Okay, and now let's get a few of our shapes up. So we only did assignments for those 4 Western ones. So let's grab Northern California, get that on the map, and Southern, and Pacific Northwest, and Plains. Okay, so now they're all on the map. Now what I want to do is run a data set search, and we have one of our accounts data sets here that's set up to color the markers by the owner. So we're going to see different markers in different colors based on the owners of these shapes. So what I'm going to do is switch this from an everywhere search to a shape search. So it's only going to search inside of the shapes I have on the map, and run that search. And there we go. So the colors don't exactly match up with what the shape colors are. That's expected, that's normal. But these are colored by those individuals. If I look at our legend here, you'll see who each of those colors belong to. And you'll notice, so if we go back to our assignment plan here for a second, that we gave the planes to Mike. And if we look at the map, Mike are the blue markers, and they are all inside of the plane's shape. And we can check these others as well. So if we look at Wendy, Wendy clearly has the Pacific Northwest shape. We come back here, we see that is exactly who we assign that to. So what is this actually doing to your Salesforce data? Well, if we click on one of these pins and we go out and take a look at the record, which apparently doesn't want to show itself. Well, okay, we will switch to Classic here really fast. Don't know why it doesn't want to show up. Okay, we were trying to look at Bralco metals. So here we see our sales assignment field. That is the field that we attached here to the assignment area or to the assignment plan. And what's filled in is the value of the assignment area. So here we see the shape and we see the actual area name. So what's matching is the area name. And there it is. It's written onto your data as a Salesforce field, and now you can do whatever else you want to do with it. So if your use case isn't about reassigning your accounts, you don't have to just do ownership reassignment. It could be you've got another user field that you want to set. It could be that dependent on which territory they fall within, they get a different process or they get a different flow. All of that kind of stuff can be triggered off of what actually ends up in this field. So that is our basic demo of how assignment plans work. So let's jump back over to our presentation and talk out some of the frequently asked questions with it. So first, I touched on this a little bit already, but can we have different territories for different service levels? And the answer is yes, absolutely. That's exactly what the SOCL filter is there for. And if, the only thing you'd want to know is if you did decide to do it this way, you are going to be building out two different assignment plans. So that's great if, especially when the shapes are different and you're going to have different shapes. But if they're identical shapes, then yes, you're going to have two different assignment plans that have the same set of shapes, but with different ownership and with different SOCL filters on them. How quickly can we expect newly created records to get assigned? This one is going to partially depend on your setup, how many map objects you have, but in general, we're looking at about 2 to 3 hours. So first it needs to get geocoded. And so that process usually happens within the hour. That one might take a little bit longer dependent on how many map objects you have. Once it has geocode information, then the assignment plan should pick it up the next hour on its hourly run. If you need it to run faster than this, we do have coding options for you. So we've got our API that you can do immediate geocoding with as well as immediate assignment with. So if you do need it to run faster than that, especially for like lead assignment that you want to get to a person as soon as possible, then absolutely you can do that. How can I test and make sure the plan is picking up the records it's supposed to? You've got a couple of different options there. I would actually recommend that you do as much of that troubleshooting on the map as possible. You can look at, like we just did on the map, and check and see that you've only got one color of map pin inside of a shape. That's a good way to check it and make sure it's all working correctly. You can also run searches where you're checking for is the assignment area field blank when it should or shouldn't be. You can run those kinds of searches and see that too. That could also, if you're building out more specific shapes, that could help you find gaps. So if you're building out some shapes at the zip code level, there's a good chance you might end up with a couple of tiny gaps that you missed, and that might help you find those as well. So I would say testing as much as possible on the map is going to be ideal, but because we are writing information into that field or into a junction object, you can of course run reports as well and find that information with reports. Can I import pre-existing territories into Geopointe's assignment plans? I am going to say kind of. But it's not directly. We do have on the map, and let me show you where this is really fast. You can, when it's zip codes, bring those into the map here. So if I was creating a new shape, we do have this from text option here, and this would allow you to write in some zip codes. So if I did, and I added those, and I applied them to the map. Let's see, where's my, there it is. If I zoom into that shape, you'll see it. It's part of the Southern California shape, but you'll see that it added them in here, so they are here. So you can do that with zip codes. So if you had a big long list of your zip codes and you wanted to pull them in, you can. Other options, if you've got them stored in other ways, nothing beautiful, nothing easy on the map, but if you do have some pre-existing ones and you would like our help getting them in, you can submit a support case and we'll help you as much as we can. I would say that it is much, much easier to do this on the map and be doing it visually. And I think most of the time you run into fewer headaches than if you were just trying to make us fit awkwardly into your old way of doing it. I think you're going to find a much better experience just making Geopointe your new way and your new visual way of doing your territory management. And this one, why call them assignment plans anyway? Why not just use territory management? And it's a valid question, but the reason is we envisioned assignment plans to be about so much more than just automation for territory management, that it can be used for any kind of automation you might want to do at a geographic level. So for example, we've got some customers using it for time zone automation. So we have time zone shapes. You can, especially if you're just working within the US, you're only going to need, a small handful of shapes built out, one for each time zone. And then you can get those assigned onto those records. And then they're there for you to use in list views so that you know who to call at the beginning of the day versus who to call at the end of the day without having to think, which time zone is this state in? So we've got that option. Service zones for products. Am I allowed to sell this service or product in this market? Yes or no? You can, so then you could use that to write that information onto your Salesforce records. The exact opposite, restriction zones. I've worked with customers in particular with Airbnb and places where Airbnb is not allowed. And so you could actually write those restrictions onto your accounts and be like, okay, this account can be used for this kind of vacation rental, but it cannot be used for an Airbnb, that kind of a thing. So that's just the tip of the iceberg for the kind of things that you can do. So anytime that assigning something based on its geographic location could be useful, that is something that you can do with assignment plans. So that is all of the content I had for today. Before we jump into your questions, I just wanted to cover a little bit more about the webinar series and about us. We do have one more webinar in this series coming up in a couple of weeks, and it is all about going to the next level with your Geopointe business and people data layer, which is all about finding and importing new data into your Salesforce system. So we're really excited to be able to bring this. This is one of our newer features, and it'll allow you to turn the map into a true prospecting tool. So I hope that many of you join us for that one as well. And just to reiterate, the first two are available on demand. The Geopointe Administration Basics webinar, as well as the customization webinar, and they are available at the link provided at the bottom. For those of you who aren't familiar with our release process, we are constantly working to keep Geopointe new and fresh and bring you new features. And so we're actually doing releases about 3 to 4 times a year. The timeline itself varies, but we do plan on that. And we've got another one coming up here right around Dreamforce. So you should, customers should start seeing emails from us here pretty quick about new stuff coming out. We do want to make sure that we are giving you a good lead time on when we start announcing this stuff to you and when it gets into your production org. So the announcement emails will start rolling out, and then sandboxes will be getting the new release first, so that you've got some time to test it in a sandbox environment. After it's been in the sandbox for a couple of weeks, then we will put it up on the App Exchange. And once it goes up on the App Exchange, we also do a release webinar so that you have a chance to see us actually demonstrate the new features. And after that, we still give you a good amount of time to test. If you do want to install it in your org, then you have the option to upgrade from the App Exchange, or you can just wait for us to push it to you. I believe currently the next one will be pushed into production just after Dreamforce. So that is how we work on our new releases. And with that, I think we are ready to turn it over for questions.
All right. Thanks, Ashley. We got so many questions that came in, so we're going to get to as many as we can here. We did have a couple questions. Both Pasha and Jason had asked a question about real-time geocoding and assignment plans, if you can run them in real time versus hourly.
Yes, you can. So that I mentioned it very, very briefly, but we do have on, let me go out to the website here really fast. Out on our website at help.geopointe.com, if you scroll down to our Apex API page in here, we have some methods here for you. So this would be if you wanted to build your own batch or triggers or anything you want to with Apex. You've got options in here for doing a geocode, and you've also got options in here for doing assignment of records. So you can do that using code, so you can make it happen faster than the hourly.
All right, perfect. We don't use Geopointe today. Is it just a territory management tool?
Absolutely not. No, that is what we covered here, but we've got lots of other use cases. This is just a tip of what we do. We can be used for marketing and for doing targeting for your next big event. We can be used for your day-to-day, for your sales guys, your road warriors, your operations folk, and just seeing where your concentrations are and building out your routes. We've got a whole dedicated route building tool in here that you can use to work with. So no, lots more options than just territory management.
Okay, perfect. And how many assignment plans can an admin create by default?
So by default, we give you the option to create 10 assignment areas as kind of a freemium package. After 10 areas, then it becomes, there are some additional costs with that, but you can always talk to your account executive about what that costs. But you can play with this to your heart's content, and it's part of your subscription for the first 10 assignment areas.
Okay, and there's quite a few questions coming in about getting a copy of the webinar and the slide deck, so I'll just kind of cover that now. Yes, you will receive a recording of the of today's presentation along with the slide deck. It usually goes out the same day. I can usually send it out today. Worst case scenario, it'll be within the next 24 hours. So just keep your eye on spam and junk folders and whatnot within the next 24 hours or so. So just to take care of those questions. And I want to create an assignment plan which will change record owner, but I want to change existing account owners. But I don't want to change existing account owners, only new ones. Is this possible?
Yes, that would, I believe that needs to fall into the realm of doing a grandfathering on the assignment plan. So we'd need to work with you to make it happen and make sure that this worked correctly, but we can grandfather them. So we've worked with other customers to do that exact thing, where the existing ones don't go anywhere, but it's only the new ones moving forward that you want to get assigned. So we would want to be involved to make sure that we don't mess up your data, and we would definitely want to make sure the assignment plan is running correctly without turning on reassign owner first, to make sure that it's doing the assignments we want before we do anything as permanent as a change owner. But yes, we can work with you and we can do it.
Okay, thank you. Joy asked a question. If we have existing territories on the account object, can we use that lookup to populate from the Geopointe assignment plan?
It would need to be built on our shapes with our assignment areas to be able to just have it automatically look at it. I guess it would all depend on exactly how it's being used today. And maybe we could work out something so that it's an easy transition. But to actually fill in this lookup field and to have those values, it's still going to need an assignment area and typically have a shape attached.
Okay. And John asked, if a shape is changed, will the records automatically be recalculated and updated accordingly?
That is a really good question, and I'm glad you brought it up because I did actually want to touch on that. We have another doc on the help site that actually covers those kinds of scenarios. So let's see here. What did I call it? Making changes to assignment plans. So that scenario, if the shape is adjusted and the record is now going to fall into a new shape, what you should be able to do is just run the all job. If for some reason, and by the all job I mean out here, once you've changed the shapes, you want it to, page loads, click the all here on the batch assign next to the assignment plan. If for some reason that does not take care of it, although it should, the best option for you is to actually deactivate the assignment plan, which will pull out all of the assignment areas, and then once it's done that, reactivate it, and it'll just do a redistribution. If you do that and you are reassigning owner, it won't touch the ownership at all, unless the ownership changes. But that's how you take care of it. So for those kinds of cases, I would strongly recommend this doc on making changes to assignment plans, and so you're aware of what your different options are for the changes you make.
Perfect. And Scott, I hope that answered your question as well. So if it didn't, or you needed help after you read that document on our help site, just reach out to us, let us know so we can help you with that. Luis asked a question. I'm creating territories based on zip codes. After I create these, I want to create one territory that covers everything else. Is there an easy way to create this?
I guess it would depend on what everywhere else means. You're still going to have to create the shape that covers everything else. If you're talking about like one small territory that is zip codes and everything else is the rest of the entire US or something like that, then I would say use the shapes, and using the lasso tool, you're going to get that done pretty fast. But I guess it just depends on what kind of granular level we're talking there. But no like great shortcut, but with the lasso tool and some creativity, it shouldn't take you too long.
And can we have a staging or test stage or test assignment plans for future territories?
Yes, and I would recommend it strongly. So you have the ability to do this with a Geopointe trial. We would recommend, if you're doing a trial in production, to do it on a small subset with those 10 free ones we give you. But if you are talking big assignments, whether you are a prospect or you are an existing customer, to do that in the sandbox. I think it'll just, get those tested in the sandbox, make sure they're working the way you want, make sure the assignments are working the way you want, and test them that way first. And you've got all the time you need to do that in the sandbox. And I would just stress again that when you are doing that, to not have reassign owner checked during testing. Only turn that on after you know for sure that your areas are going and doing what you want them to.
Okay, and what is the minimum needed on a partial address to pull into the tool?
So it can be a pretty general address. It just depends on how accurate you want it to be or how accurate you would expect it to be. So you could have an address that was simply United States, and it will pull it into the southeast corner of Kansas for you. If you have just at the state level, it's going to pull it to the center of that state. And if you've got the city, typically it's going to pull it to the center of the city. The zip code will give you to the center of the zip code. So in those cases, it would just be, if you are okay with a general poll and you just kind of want them defined by their general location, whatever you've got should be sufficient. But if you're looking for more specific territories, like down to their actual address, then obviously you're going to want to stay away from those more generalized ones.
And just piggybacking off that previous question about testing the assignment plans before pushing them out, can we deploy the shapes and assignment plans from Sandbox and put them into production?
They are custom objects and are exportable. And so you do have those kinds of options. The only thing I would caution you on for doing that would be making sure, I would still probably build out the assignment plan itself in production over again, but the shapes, as long as you've got the ID of the folder you're moving them into, the export should be pretty smooth.
And David had asked, is there a way to export the underlying coordinates that make up the various assignment plans via a CSV file?
Not really. If you are building out your own shape, so that would be you're using these drawing. Let's see. Hang on, go to webinars in my way. There we go. If you're using like the polygon tool and you're drawing your own shape, like so, that is going to store some latitudes and longitudes at each one of the vertices in there. But when you're using the shape library, those are actually just storing shape IDs. And so there isn't actually any latitude, longitude data to be exported.
Okay. We still have some more questions we didn't get to. There were so many questions that came in, so thanks everybody for sending those over. But we will reach out to you and make sure that those questions get answered. There was a question about training. Can you, Ashley, really quick show where people can go to get some training information and different kind of help areas on our site?
Yep. So yes. So for some additional help on assignment plans themselves, help.geopointe.com. We have a whole section down here dedicated to shapes and assignment plans to help you. And we've also got a tutorial specifically on shape building that goes through all your different types of shape building. If you get stuck, by all means, log a case. You'll be talking to me or a member of my team, and you can do that here. Further stuff, the webinars in particular are on our main Geopointe page, geopointe.com. And you want to go to resources webinars. And you can see this one will be up there and available for a rewatch later. And the other ones are here as well. We've got plenty here, including prior releases and other stuff. So lots to choose from.
Perfect. Thanks, Ashley. All the questions that came in, obviously this is a very popular topic and there's lots of questions around this. So please, like I said, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. There's a contact form on our website. or the help site as well. As I mentioned, I will be emailing out the recording and the slide deck within the next 24 hours or so. It comes from webinars@geopointe.com. So be on the lookout for that. Check junk and spam folders just in case. And hopefully you can join us for our last and final webinar later this month in our admin series on people and data layers. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. And thank you, Ashley, for presenting today. Great job.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.